You know, we spend so much of our lives chasing happiness like it's a destination, like we'll finally arrive at it when we get the job, lose the weight, find the partner, or master the morning routine. But here's what I've learned after 2 decades of studying shame, courage, and vulnerability. Happiness isn't something we find, it's something we choose over and over again. Now, before you roll your eyes and say that sounds like a Pinterest quote, hear me out. Choosing happiness doesn't mean pretending things are fine when they're not. It doesn't mean slapping on a smile when your heart is breaking. It means we get radically honest about our lives and still find a way to say this moment is enough. It's about practicing gratitude when it would be easier to complain. It's about setting boundaries when people-pleasing feels safer. It's about giving ourselves permission to feel joy even when we're scared it won't last. We don't protect our happiness by avoiding pain. We protect it by learning to live fully in the moment with courage. And if we want to be happy every time, we have to let go of perfection. Let go of the idea that we earn happiness by performing, pleasing, or pretending. Happiness is not a prize. It's a practice, and it's yours every single time you choose to show up as you are. We've been taught almost subconsciously that happiness is something we find once we finally get everything right. Once our ducks are in a row, once we hit the goals, once we fix the messiness inside us, we believe happiness will finally come sit beside us like a loyal friend. But that belief, as comforting as it seems, is one of the biggest setups for shame and disappointment. Because what happens when we do all the things we were told to do, check all the boxes, and happiness still feels just out of reach? The truth is, happiness is not a destination. It's not this external, far-off place we arrive at when life looks perfect from the outside. It's not in the job title, the dream house, the number on the scale, or the Instagrammable moments. Those things can bring temporary joy, sure, but sustainable, soul-level happiness, that's an inside job. It's cultivated, not collected. It's a choice we make again and again in ordinary moments that don't look extraordinary from the outside. And I get it. Choosing happiness sounds simplistic, especially when life is messy, painful, and complicated. It's hard to hear happiness as a choice when you're in the thick of grief or burnout or betrayal. But choosing happiness doesn't mean ignoring the pain or pretending it doesn't exist. That's not real joy. That's toxic positivity, and it's not brave. Choosing happiness means allowing yourself to be fully present with all of it, the heartbreak and the beauty, the uncertainty and the small joys, the grief and the gratitude. It's a bold act of resistance to say, even here, I can honor the good. One of the things we misunderstand most about happiness is that we think it needs to feel big, that it should come with fireworks and huge life moments. But most of the time, happiness whispers. It shows up quietly in the way your coffee tastes just right in the morning, in the way your child laughs from the belly, in that song that hits your chest in just the right way on a drive with no destination. These are the moments we usually scroll past or minimize, thinking, this isn't it. Real happiness must be bigger than this. But it's not. This is it. This is the good stuff. And we miss it because we're chasing the highlight reel. What I've learned over and over again is that happiness is a byproduct of presence, of actually showing up for your life. Not the life you're planning or the life you regret, but the one you're in right now. That takes courage. That takes vulnerability, because being present means you're not numbing, you're not avoiding, you're feeling. And when you feel everything, You create the space to feel joy more fully. That's the paradox of happiness. It's not about constant pleasure, it's about full aliveness. And let me be clear, choosing happiness doesn't mean you never break down, never feel rage, never cry on the bathroom floor. I've been there many times. Choosing happiness doesn't erase those moments. It just means you refuse to let them define you. You make the decision that even in your most fragile places, you are still worthy of joy. You allow joy to coexist with your struggles. You give yourself permission to feel it, not when everything is better, not when you're fixed, but now, exactly as you are. There is deep power in reclaiming happiness. Not as something that happens to us, but something we get to practice. And like any practice, it's imperfect. Some days you'll feel it easily. Other days you'll have to fight for it. That's okay. Happiness isn't a permanent state. It's a rhythm, a wave, a muscle we build. And the more we choose it, the more we recognize it. The more we say, this moment matters. The more we realize we were never waiting for happiness, we were waiting to remember that it was always here. We have this deep longing for joy, don't we? We crave it, search for it, try to manufacture it in our relationships, our careers, even in how we present ourselves to the world. But here's the catch. Most of us are terrified of joy. It sounds strange when you say it out loud, but think about it. The minute we feel joy rising in our bodies, we instinctively want to cut it off. It's too vulnerable, too exposed, like we're holding something beautiful and fragile that might break. And rather than risk the heartbreak, we'd rather put it down before it's taken from us. We do this because joy, real joy, is the most vulnerable emotion we can experience. It doesn't come with guarantees. There's no promise it will stay. And if you've ever been blindsided by pain or loss, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You know what it feels like to be standing in a moment of deep happiness only to have the rug pulled out from under you. So what do? We rehearse tragedy. We tell ourselves, don't get too excited. Don't let your guard down. Something bad is coming. And in doing that, we rob ourselves of the very thing we're trying to protect, the ability to fully feel joy. You can't selectively numb emotions. If you numb fear, you also numb joy. If you shut down vulnerability, you shut down love and connection too. And when you shut down joy to avoid disappointment, you miss the very essence of what makes life meaningful. We think we're shielding ourselves from pain, but what we're really doing is shielding ourselves from life, from living fully, richly, messily. And that's where happiness actually lives. Not in the sanitized, risk-free version of our lives, but in the wild, unpredictable, vulnerable truth of it all. That's why joy requires courage. It takes courage to be joyful in a world that tells you to brace for impact. It takes courage to dance in the kitchen with your kids, to laugh until your stomach hurts, to say, I love you first, to take the trip, to believe good things can happen. Courage doesn't mean we aren't afraid. It means we are willing to feel the fear and still lean into joy anyway. That is vulnerability in motion. That is the heartbeat of real happiness. Not the absence of fear, but the willingness to feel everything and still choose joy. And listen, I'm not saying it's easy. Vulnerability gets a bad rap. We're told it's weakness or indulgent or somehow unnecessary. But every time I've seen real transformation, real connection, real happiness, it has come on the other side of vulnerability. When we allow ourselves to be seen, when we tell the truth about what we feel, when we stop pretending. Vulnerability is not about oversharing. It's about being real. And when we are real, joy has room to breathe. Joy can't exist in a space that's guarded, armored, or constantly performing. So many of us are afraid of joy because we think we don't deserve it. Somewhere along the way, we learn to earn our worth. We were taught that happiness is a reward for doing life right, for being productive enough, strong enough, good enough. But joy isn't earned. It's our birthright. It's not reserved for people with perfect lives. It's for all of us. And when we stop waiting to be worthy of joy and instead allow it in, mess and all, that's when everything begins to change. You want to be happy every time? Open the door to joy every time. Let it in even when you're scared, especially when you're scared. Let it in even when the world feels heavy. Don't wait until it's safe. It's never going to feel fully safe. That's the whole point. Joy walks hand in hand with vulnerability. You can't separate them. And when you stop trying to protect yourself from joy, you find something deeper. A life that feels real. A life that isn't perfect, but is profoundly meaningful. And yes, happy. Gratitude is not an attitude. It's a practice. We love to throw the word around like it's a feeling we just stumble into when life is going well. But here's what years of research and my own messy, beautiful human experience have taught me. Gratitude is one of the most powerful tools we have to create real, lasting happiness. And it has almost nothing to do with how good or bad things look on the outside. It's not passive, it's active. And it doesn't just change how we feel, it changes how we live. There's a deep misconception that gratitude is only accessible when life is tidy, when the job is secure, the kids are thriving, the body is healthy, and the relationships are smooth. But real gratitude is forged in the fire. It's not reserved for mountaintop moments. It's often born in the valleys. It's choosing to whisper thank you even when your heart is tired, even when your plans have unraveled, even when the world feels a little too heavy to hold. That choice, that daily intentional practice is what opens the door to joy. Gratitude doesn't deny pain. It doesn't ignore loss or pretend everything is okay when it isn't. What it does is keep our hearts soft. It grounds us in the present moment and gently reminds us that even in the struggle, there is still beauty, still connection, still a reason to look around and say, there's something here worth noticing. That noticing, those small, almost imperceptible moments, is where happiness lives. Not in the big dramatic changes, but in the quiet awe of what already is. One of the most surprising findings in my research was this. People who describe themselves as joyful are not people who have more reasons to be joyful. They are people who practice gratitude consistently. They write it down, they speak it out loud, they share it with their families, they turn it into a rhythm, a ritual. It's not accidental. And what's even more powerful, they don't just practice it when they feel joyful, they practice it especially when they don't. Because they know that gratitude isn't the result of joy, it's the pathway to it. So often we wait for happiness to come to us. We think when things calm down, I'll feel better. When this hard season passes, I'll appreciate life more. But happiness doesn't wait for the storm to pass. Gratitude is the umbrella. Gratitude says, even here, in the middle of this mess, I can still choose to see what's good. And that choice, it doesn't just shift our perspective, it shifts our biology. Studies have shown that gratitude literally rewires our brains to notice more positives, to reduce anxiety, to build emotional resilience. This isn't just self-help fluff. It's science, and it's sacred. Gratitude also has a sneaky, miraculous way of shrinking fear. When we start noticing what we have instead of what we lack, we operate from abundance rather than scarcity. We stop measuring our worth against someone else's highlight reel. We stop chasing perfection and start embracing sufficiency. Not this is perfect, but this is enough. And enough is powerful. Enough gives us permission to stop running and just be. Enough is where joy begins to breathe. I know gratitude won't fix everything. It won't make grief go away or erase trauma or solve all your problems, but it will anchor you. It will give you something to hold on to when everything else feels unsteady. And in that anchoring, there's peace, there's clarity, there's a subtle kind of joy that doesn't shout but hums gently, steadily through the chaos. That's the kind of happiness I want us to fight for. Not the fleeting, performative kind, but the deep, rooted kind that grows from the daily, radical act of saying thank you, even now. Perfectionism is seductive. It shows up dressed like ambition, disguised as excellence, whispering lies that sound like wisdom. It says, if I can just do everything right, if I can be enough, do enough, prove enough, then I'll finally be safe. Then I'll finally be happy. But here's the truth I've seen in the research and felt in my bones. Perfectionism doesn't protect us. It imprisons us. It doesn't deliver joy. It steals it. The hardest part about perfectionism is that it's praised in our culture. We reward people for being high achieving, for pushing themselves to the brink, for never showing cracks, but we rarely ask the cost. We rarely stop to wonder what happens behind the curtain. What perfectionism really does is keep us performing instead of living. It convinces us that love, belonging, and happiness are things we have to earn. And if that's true, then we never get to rest. We never get to be enough just as we are. Perfectionism is not the same as striving for excellence. Excellence is grounded in healthy goals, purpose, and growth. Perfectionism is rooted in shame and fear. It says, what will people think? It tells us our worth is attached to how flawless we appear. And that belief is dangerous. Because when we inevitably fall short, and we all do, perfectionism doesn't give us grace. It gives us shame. It doesn't say, try again. It says, you're a failure. And let's talk about how perfectionism is directly tied to happiness. The more we chase perfection, the further we move away from joy. Why? Because perfection is a moving target. It never lets us arrive. It's always saying, almost there, just a little more. So we're constantly hustling, polishing, editing ourselves to fit into some imagined version of perfect. And in doing that, we lose our connection to the present. We miss the moment we're in because we're so focused on who we should be that we forget to appreciate who we are. Perfectionism is loud and joy is quiet. It's easy to let that perfectionist voice drown out the subtle, everyday happiness that lives in imperfection. The laughter when the recipe flops, the connection in an honest mistake, the joy in messy art, in cracked voices singing, in plans that fall apart and become memories. That's where joy hides, in the places perfectionism tells us are unworthy. When we choose to silence perfectionism, even for a moment, we start to hear joy whispering, this is enough. You are enough. We also have to understand that perfectionism isolates. It disconnects us. Because when we're trying to appear perfect, we don't let people see the real us. We armor up. We become performers instead of participants in our own lives. And happiness cannot thrive in isolation. It needs authenticity. It needs connection. It needs the freedom to be seen fully, mess and all. When we drop the armor of perfectionism, we make room for love, laughter, creativity, and genuine joy. And those are the roots of lasting happiness. The freedom from perfectionism doesn't come from finally doing everything right. It comes from waking up to the truth that our worth is not on the line, that happiness doesn't wait for perfect conditions, that we don't have to earn joy by being flawless. We get to claim it because we're human, because we're showing up, because we're trying. The moment we let go of the lie that we must be perfect to be worthy is the moment we start to feel truly alive. And in that aliveness, happiness can finally take root. There is a common myth that happiness is something we can achieve alone. If we just get strong enough, smart enough, successful enough, then we'll be okay. But the truth is, we were never wired to go it alone. We are hardwired for connection. It's in our biology. It's in our bones. And not the surface level kind of connection that comes from a like, a follow, or a carefully curated online persona. I'm talking about real, messy, unfiltered, soul-deep connection. The kind that says, I see you, I get you, you're not alone. In a world obsessed with independence and self-sufficiency, we've been conditioned to believe that needing others is weakness. We glorify the lone wolf. We praise self-made success stories. And yet, behind all that performance, so many of us are quietly aching for someone to truly see us. Happiness can't live in that kind of loneliness. It can't breathe in spaces where we feel like we have to hide parts of ourselves just to be accepted. Connection is not optional. It's not a bonus. It's emotional oxygen. Without it, we suffocate, even if we look like we're doing just fine. One of the most courageous things we can do is allow ourselves to be known, to let people in, to show up without the armor and say, this is me, this is where it hurts, this is what I hope for. Vulnerability is the gateway to connection. And connection is the gateway to sustainable, soul-filling happiness. The kind of happiness that isn't just about pleasure, it's about purpose. It's about being part of something bigger than ourselves. And we can't access that if we're hiding behind masks of perfection or pretending we don't need anyone. True connection isn't about impressing people. It's about being honest with them. It's about telling the truth of your story, even the parts you wish you could skip. When we allow ourselves to be seen, we give others permission to do the same. That's where real joy is born. Not in impressing others, but in relating to them. In finding those moments when someone says, "You feel that way too? I thought I was the only one." That kind of resonance doesn't just feel good, it heals. It repairs the fractures in us. It reminds us that we belong. And yet connection requires risk. It means putting our hearts out there with no guarantee of being met. That's scary. I won't pretend it's not. But the alternative, disconnection, isolation, loneliness, that's far more dangerous. We don't talk about how damaging loneliness is to our health, but it rivals smoking, obesity, and heart disease. And emotionally, loneliness breeds shame, self-doubt, and the kind of quiet sadness that erodes joy from the inside out. If we want to be happy, not just momentarily uplifted, but truly, deeply fulfilled, we have to get brave about connection. We need to stop treating community like an afterthought. We need to stop saving connection for the holidays or emergencies. We need to make space for the messy, imperfect, sacred act of being together. Invite someone over even if your house isn't clean. Send the text even if you haven't talked in months. Say what you really mean. Listen with your whole heart. These are not small things. They're life-giving things. They're the building blocks of happiness that last beyond the surface. Because in the end, we don't remember the accolades, the achievements, or the to-do lists we conquered. We remember the people. The laughter around the dinner table, the friend who stayed through the storm, the hand we held when the world felt like it was falling apart. Happiness is found in the spaces between us, not in spite of our need for connection, but because of it. When we choose to show up and let ourselves be seen, when we risk vulnerability to invite someone in, we're not just creating joy, we're becoming joy. We are living in a world that is constantly pulling us away from ourselves. Our attention is the most precious thing we have, and yet it's under siege. From our phones, from our calendars, from our fears, from our pasts, and our imagined futures. We spend so much of our lives racing ahead, planning the next move, bracing for what might go wrong, or replaying something that already happened. And in all that rushing, all that scrambling, we miss the moment we're in. We miss this moment. And it's in this moment, not the next one, that joy lives. Presence isn't about perfection. It doesn't mean we have to live every second in some meditative state or never get distracted. Presence is about returning to what is right here, right now, again and again, with compassion. It's a practice, a radical, brave practice, because let's be honest, sometimes the present moment is uncomfortable. Sometimes it's boring. Sometimes it brings up things we'd rather avoid. So we reach for distractions. We numb, we plan, we scroll. But every time we leave the present, we also step away from the possibility of joy. Joy doesn't shout over the noise. It doesn't chase us down. It waits quietly, patiently, for us to slow down enough to notice it. It hides in the steam rising off your coffee in the morning, in the sound of your child laughing from the next room, in the way sunlight filters through the window while you're washing dishes. These aren't Instagram moments. They're not curated or polished, but they're real. And they are invitations, little whispers saying, "Come back, be here." One of the reasons we avoid presence is because being present demands that we feel. When we drop into the now, we stop numbing. We stop running. We have to feel what's really there. Joy, yes, but also grief, fear, longing. But here's the paradox. We can't access real joy without also opening the door to the hard stuff. They live in the same house. The more we allow ourselves to feel the uncomfortable, the more available we become to experience joy in its full, raw, heart-expanding form. That's the risk of presence, and also the gift. Presence is also about honesty. It's saying, this is what is real right now, not what I wish were true, not what I hope comes next, but this. It's being grounded enough in your body and your breath to stop performing and start participating. It's choosing to engage with your life as it actually is, not just as you want it to be. And when we meet ourselves in the now with gentleness and curiosity, we find that there is more beauty, more meaning, and more joy available to us than we ever imagined. It was never far away. We were just too distracted to see it. We've been taught that happiness is in the big moments, the milestones, the promotions, the accomplishments. But presence teaches us that happiness is cumulative. It builds quietly in the in-between spaces. It's found in the pauses, the glances, The ordinary seconds we often overlook while we're chasing something shinier. When we become present to our actual lives, we begin to see that joy has been showing up all along. We just weren't home to receive it. The truth is, presence is a rebellion. In a world that profits off our distraction and thrives on our dissatisfaction, choosing to be present is an act of power. It says, I will not miss my life. And that is where happiness begins. Not in the next goal, not after we've fixed everything, not once we've arrived at some imagined destination. Happiness begins in presence, in this breath, in this body, in this moment. The portal is always open. We just have to walk through. So maybe happiness isn't something we chase. Maybe it's something we choose over and over again in the small, quiet moments of our lives. When we trade perfection for presence, when we reach for gratitude instead of comparison, when we whisper, I'm enough, even when we feel like we're not, when we allow ourselves to be seen, when we show up messy, wholehearted, and all in, that's where happiness begins. Not because everything is perfect, but because we stopped waiting for perfect. And here's the thing no one tells you. Happiness isn't a constant. It's not a finish line. It's not a life free of struggle. It's a life engaged. It's being brave enough to feel the hard stuff and still open your heart to the beauty. It's choosing connection over armor, gratitude over scarcity, and presence over hustle. It's a practice, a sacred, imperfect, courageous practice. And the more we live like that with open hands and open hearts, the more we realize that happiness wasn't hiding. It was always here, waiting for us to come home to it. So breathe deep, let go of what no longer serves you, and remember, joy is not out there, it's in here. And you, just as you are right in this moment, you are worthy of it.